Says you
We are now live. Welcome, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader, Damien, and I'm here with a guest of mine, one of my old YouTube friends and one of my favorites, Rasa, known as LaRasa on YouTube.
simple. Hello, everybody. So yeah, it's a very nice compliment. Sorry, I'm so gonna start blushing. So I'm gonna start blushing. Say hello.
She's a young old friend,
Oh, thanks.
but now a mom, so she'll soon age rapidly before our eyes.
Oh, thank you very much for the doing for future.
But today we were going to talk about a European comic that Rasa discovered. And when I saw the artwork, I thought, I have to check this out too. And it's on Comixology. I don't think it's even in print in English. I think it may be only digital in English.
I think so, because I was looking around printed version because my priority would be printed version, but due to unavailability for anywhere I looked, I decided, okay, I'm going to go digital for once, for a couple of times.
Speaking of a YouTube favorite, Rez Reads is here with us. Hey, Rez, cheers.
Oh, hi, Rez.
And she knows her European comics. I don't know if you've, Rez, ever heard of Glorious Summer, or by the creators Zidrou and Jordi Lefebvre.
Good pronunciation.
So, how did you discover this? Someone mentioned it on Twitter. Was that it?
No. Basically, on Twitter, I'm following a couple of artists, and they were complimenting him. I don't know. I don't recall exactly what it was, but I just somehow decided to click on his page and check what is it all about. And I saw his art, and from that point was followed that I looked what he was doing. And Glorious Summers, it seems to be something he's been doing for a while now. Well, in 2018. Now I just stopped me there, and I decided, okay, I need to check it out. So I decided to get a first volume, as they call them, or albums.
Right. Right. They're standalone. They're standalone albums.
Yeah. And decided to go immerse myself in this. I, of course, read reviews before to see what people are thinking about. Then mainly was interesting. Yes, story was okay. But the art really what drove me to do this and read it. But as we're gonna follow in this conversation, we probably both find out that we both enjoyed the writing, hopefully, as I did, for sure.
Yes, I'm gonna do a screen share and try to show people some of the art. There we go. Oh, what? I just screwed it up, I think. Is my screen on?
No longer you? Yeah, you're no longer screening.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood what the button was saying. Let me try again.
There you go. Now you're doing it.
Okay. So hopefully everyone can see it, because before I pressed a button that said present to everybody, and that made it go away. Jack is here but going. Hey, Jack Yo. Uncanny Kyle Waka's here. Rez Reads. Can you guys see my screen share? Can you see the Glorious Summer now? YouTube is confusing me a little bit. So this is,
you can see everything. I can see it for sure.
You can see it.
Yeah, I'm checking the video as well. I can probably see it as well.
You can see it as well. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see the chat. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter.
The first thing that you that just struck me was the colors are just really awesome.
And the one thing is, it's really helps the digital. I've noticed lately, whatever I have read before, the digital colors is really kind of opens up a bit more than you usually see on a page, on the piece of paper. So, but yeah, definitely, it's not him who's coloring, by the way.
There's two. He is one of the two colorists.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know who did what.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought he had a colorist because he was, I think, at the end of this issue was saying so thankful for her help or his help. Sorry, I don't know if it's female or male.
Mado Pena.
Yeah.
So, well, it might be that colorist helped him finish it up, or maybe she colored
Mm.
She did some aspects of the coloring and he did other aspects. So we'll probably never know that. But let me
No.
look on the second volume. I've got the second volume up here too.
Yeah.
See what, yeah, also co-colored
Yeah.
with Mado.
I see. Oh, there, I can see it now for sure, saying that it's 2 colors. Yeah. Interesting.
So, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to know for sure.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
But
well,
it's
shall I just sort of, my general top view of this is that each album is about one summer vacation.
yeah.
One summer vacation per year. Every August they go on vacation, which I think is traditional in a lot of European countries.
Yeah.
So each volume is one particular vacation. The first one takes place in 1974, and the hero, or not the hero, the father of the family is a comic book cartoonist, and they have, in 1974 they have 4 children, and then there's the wife, and there's a I got the 2 different ones confused, because so the second volume takes place in 1969 when they only have 3 kids, but they're pregnant with the 4.
So the basically the first album, the third, number 1, which is called Southbound, is a basic what end of the story, I think. If it's because I've read 4 of these albums, so the first album is saying this is what basically end of, like, not end of it, but just like main introduction with a driven storyline which will follow after in a couple of volumes. So yes, it's the first story is 1973 or 4, where the family is, and then the second volume, the volume will be in 1969, if I recall it correctly.
Here's one of my favorite pictures. Very 1970s way of dressing.
Yeah. So we're following basically the whole family for the summer vacations. In and every single album, that's what happens. They basically decides to go for family vacations, and what happens in those vacations. So the first one we have waiting for him, because he's a cartoonist. He's trying to illustrate or help illustrate a comic, and unfortunately, our dad is not very successful.
Right.
In his own, he's trying to get through to become more popular, and to get his own publishing work, like what we see in here in this page, what our Sleep Reader is showing to you guys.
There's a panel from one of his comics about the 4 arms of justice.
Yes.
Which was one of his failures, because it scared children.
Yeah. And then yes, and what is really amazing to me, for me, the first, so everything felt really happy. They're waiting for the dad. They're a bit late, 4 days now, or for 3 days in the story,
right.
The first story, and then suddenly you see this panel. I don't know if you can scroll through, and you see the mother sitting in the toilet with her she's crying basically, and you're like, what just happened? Well, there you go. She's sitting in there, and she's having it, and suddenly you have this tone where, like, something is not right, even though it's still happy-go-lucky. And we see afterwards the story of where they're sitting in the car, everybody's laughing, going towards the direction where they're gonna go.
My one complaint about this is the people always look happy.
Yeah, well, I think it's
happy and sad in that picture at the same time. He can't help but draw people kind of looking goofily happy.
Yeah. Maybe.
So what we discover eventually during the course of this story is that she's planning to get divorced, or to separate, at least after this vacation.
Exactly.
Because she's not happy with her life. Because of his trying to follow his dream, her dream got lost, and his dream hasn't been successful. It's not clear what her dream of life would be, or at least I didn't pick up on that. But anyway,
you will be told about that in the next volumes, by the way, just to give you a bit of a
volume 3.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I think it was really good to see them all goofy and happy, and then suddenly
Yeah.
you have the tones of seriousness, because it shocks you kind of way. For me, that was like, something's not right, but they still pretending to be happy, and he's saying it looks like a very happy family, even though it seems to be by already this tone for me that they weren't, like not the richest family, because maybe because he's a cartoonist and he's struggling to be a popular cartoonist with everybody else, like everybody else is, kind of thing.
Well, you've read more than I've read. Do you think they're
Yeah.
unhappy, or do you think she's? I mean, by the end of the story, she decides to stay,
Yeah.
and that's another thing I don't. I'd probably need to reread it to fully grasp why she decides to stay.
Well,
Because the vacation was so fun. Is that part
yeah,
of it?
yeah. The thing is, it's I think it's what he, as a writer, as he drew, was his initial plan was in this first volume is kind of give you, in a way, the one story, and you can be satisfied with it in partakes without his doesn't give you the whole story itself, but there's nuggets where you could be happy with at the end of it, kind of thing.
Right.
When you continue reading them, you find he's using the other characters and he's bringing the more story back to us. So he's basically rewarding you to sticking around after reading this. You reading second volume, you start to understand more about the characters and why she's like this. Why she's struggling so much, even though they look so happy in this first volume.
Right. So that's interesting that you start sort of at the end of the story, and then
Yeah.
throughout the volumes you fill it in. Although I think you can enjoy, at least the volumes I've read, you could enjoy any volume by itself also,
Yeah.
which is
Yes, you
quite the
can.
art to make it all separate
I
out.
think I think that's what's really difficult for a writer as well. If he has a story and he decides kind of use the same principle in multiple volumes, and how to keep your readers interested in it.
Yeah.
And I think he continuously, after reading, well, I read 4 of them. I'm really there's number 5, but I don't think it's available everywhere yet, because I think it's just released recently. And I'm really looking forward to see the 5th one, because that one will be where the kids will be completely grown up.
I thought I saw a 5th one on Comixology, but maybe I only saw 4.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
I thought I saw something that takes place in 1980.
Yeah, I think 1980. I think. Oh, let me see if I've read that one.
But that then takes place after this. Maybe I got it. I don't know where I saw that now. Yeah, there is a 5th volume available to me anyway.
Oh, is it?
Warrior
1979 is the
7.
4th
It
volume.
says it's 1980 and the Falderot family is ready for a new kind of summer vacation. After years of roughing it, luxury and comfort are on the horizon in a brand new custom-made vacation home.
Yeah.
So maybe he's finally made it. But whether they'll be happier that way, I mean, I guess there's some unhappiness in this family, but it feels in many ways very ideal, and maybe to a certain extent their not being rich has made them develop ways to have fun on their vacation. They just always camp out in tents, and they kind of wing it as they go along, which, maybe in real life winging it as you go along would be tense and unpleasant, but it seems really fun and adventurous.
Well, did you remember when they basically ended up staying in a house where they didn't plan? It wasn't a hotel, and then the husband went on a phone call with his brother. Do you remember that story? And suddenly
you're talking about in
find
the
out,
first one where he finds out his brother, is it his brother's wife or his brother's?
Yeah. So
is
that's what I'm
dying?
saying to you. They all happy-go-lucky. It seems everything is perfect, and suddenly, boom, there's a story, and you're like, why? Like, why did you bring up such a thing?
We
And
were
it
having
all
such a
adds
good
up in
time.
the Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then you realize his brother's wife has cancer, and then they have to cut the holiday short.
To go to her funeral. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it's so
that's,
kind of yeah.
it's real life stuff and it's unhappy stuff, but they still seem to handle it with aplomb, and there's a certain,
Well,
even when they're
they
heading
look
back
like
for the funeral,
yeah, yeah.
maybe because of the kids,
Where,
they're great parents who
mm,
always make things fun for their kids, I suppose.
yeah, which I would like. I really would like to have that much power of being always happy for. But now being new mom is, reading this is actually more. Maybe I'm taking into it more when if I wouldn't have a child. Do you know what I mean? For the family and how to
Imagine
make
four children and keeping it together all the
exactly.
time.
Yeah.
So
So on one twist on this volume, so you remember that imaginary friend Biku
yes,
of the sun? And now the last panels of the story, or I think it's the almost last panels of the story, the wife, she's again in the bathroom, relaxing and having a really good time, and suddenly she sees the imaginary friend.
right. We actually see Beefcoo near the end. Let me see if I can find
Yes, and she's talking to him, and that threw me off completely. It's like,
yes.
so is it imaginary friend of hers and her child, or she has as well an imaginary friend, which is, if it enriches the story even further more for me, because at the end of the day we have a skill, and it's like, oh yeah, leave this for, because I have best friend, imaginary friend Biku, who needs to eat and blah blah blah, and the wife keep on like kind of in a way has conversation like you would expect the mother to appreciate, oh yeah, it has an imaginary friend, you just leave and he's gonna go out of it. Then suddenly you have her in the bathroom, and there you go, this imaginary friend, she having conversation,
Right.
and she having conversations.
He looks like a giant beaver or squirrel or something.
It's a squirrel. It's a squirrel.
Squirrel. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a
So
squirrel.
I imagined that she took on the imaginary friend for herself, just because, you spend so much time talking with your child about the imaginary friend, and eventually it becomes a useful psychological thing for you too. My daughter had an imaginary duck. Since she's not here and is not knowing, I'm giving away her secret. And I never actually talked to the imaginary duck, but I definitely, just had that feeling of I thought about the duck a lot. So maybe this is like her talking to herself in a way. I don't know, though. Maybe we could think the imaginary friend has become real for her and her son.
Yeah.
The whole family was very committed to the imaginary friend thing.
Very much so. They even stopped. They turned around, looked for him, which was
Right.
amazing. I mean,
they didn't tell him, "Oh no, your imaginary friend's here." When he said the imaginary friend's not here, they drove back and they went to search for him at the gas station.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's the thing what I really enjoyed. I think that's what really made me feel I want to continue reading this story, because maybe it's a family, how they deal with situations, and there's bad situations. There's nothing perfect about them, basically, even though they look so perfect.
Right.
They're
not perfect, but they manage to squeeze a lot of happiness and joy out of a lot of situations. So even here, where they're heading back to the funeral, they still stop at their traditional French fry or pomme frite stand on the way.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's really like I think
and the mom looks very happy in this scene. So maybe this is somewhere where she's changing her mind.
I think she's suddenly realizing, maybe it's still worth fighting for them, like for the whole family. There's another bad story, and it seems to be that mother lost a child in between all of the 4 kids. So we're not sure when it happened. Of course, he hasn't told the writer hasn't told us in this volume for sure. But there's this what you realize when you will read following volumes. It's that writer will, whatever you saw in this volume, it's kind of, he goes back and explains to you what's happened. Basically, that comic book poster, we're going to show you a couple of first pages in the volume 2, how it became and why it wasn't successful.
Right.
And this is actually really good that he's following through, kind of like he doesn't leave you to wonder. He lets you kind of still questions, like you still question yourself, like seeing how way is going to go with the storyline, but he's always gives you that, like I say, rewards of continue reading and saying why this happened and why she's like this and why the family is what it is, why the husband himself, like really trying to be cartoonist you know, like because
Right.
life is not easy, but he's still, like, as I say, he's a very positive man, and he has great imagination. He's really trying himself, like, you know, I'm gonna make it, kind of thing. I will become the one. The dream will,
Right.
like, the dream is gonna be true to him.
Well, and he's already making somewhat of a living as a cartoonist, but he needs to make a better
Yeah.
living. In the second volume, the only other one that I've read that takes place in 1969, we actually get to see a few pages of his comic, which I enjoyed.
I really did enjoy it. I wanted like to read more.
It's
I
funny
felt
that
this good story.
the title 4 was in English,
Uh-huh.
even though that means failure in French, someone points out.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does fail.
Yeah, it does fail, unfortunately.
But
As we
he's
can see in the second volume, we continue the same kind of a storyline. They're going on holidays, waiting for their dad to finish the story of the
but
art, and then
it's 4 years earlier or 5 years earlier, 4 or 5 years earlier,
yeah,
1969.
before the fourth child's birth, I think.
Right. And one of the running gags is they don't want to tell anyone that she's pregnant, but one of the children keeps telling everybody that she's going to have a baby.
Yeah. It's like, because it's a superstitious, you know, like when you get pregnant, and like I was the same when I was pregnant. I didn't want to tell anybody for the first 3 months that I was pregnant. There's the thing saying, if you like, you can kind of wish yourself bad luck with that. So
Right. It feels like you can jinx. That's the time when you're most likely to lose the baby, so you don't want to jinx yourself.
So I could like understand that completely, why she wouldn't have wanted to say anything. And then here we
your family seems even happier, I think, in 1969, at least till the end, because they don't know that his comic has been a failure. We do have the sadness of their grandfather, or the father, who's alone. The mother must have died at some previous time. And I guess they are of Spanish descent, but living in Belgium, at least the father.
Well,
the father and his father.
He is his father, the cartoonist father, Pierre. I think his name is Pierre, isn't it? Yeah, he's of Spanish descent, and she is, I think, Belgium or something like that.
So I assume he was actually born in Spain, but I can't tell for sure. His father clearly is born in Spain.
Yeah, and then somehow there's another storyline which I'm not sure even as well, why the father doesn't want them to go back to Spain. That's interesting.
Right. So, well, you know, Franco was the dictator in charge of Spain for decades. I'm not sure when he rose to power, in the 30s, maybe, and stayed in power maybe till sometime in the late 70s or 80s. I can't remember for sure when he finally, when Spain finally became a democracy again.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure history-wise, so I wouldn't be able to tell you if it's what it was.
So it's kind of, I mean, not exactly the same, but it's kind of like, you know, someone who's fled Europe because of the Nazis or something, only the Nazis stayed in power in Spain, so to speak.
Yeah.
A somewhat fascist government. Anyway, I'm not sure the extent of it. So his life is kind of sad, but even here, he's presented mostly as a happy fellow. He's gonna house sit for them, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still alive by 1973, 74 when the other one happened. But
I wouldn't say well, he doesn't appear in other stories so far I've read.
So anyway, but overall, this one seemed even happier to me because it didn't have the issue of divorce hanging over it. And there was the joy. We know from reading the first volume that baby is going to be born and be a happy child. So anyway, a lot of the story is just spent at the beach having fun. And I felt like this, I felt like, oh, I'm really reading a European comic here now, because I've never read an American comic where people are just having fun for page after page after page.
You have to have something bad.
And I don't know if, I don't, you know, that may be unique to this comic, or it may be in European comics, there's more room to just enjoy yourself for 20 pages or something.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, actually, it's funny because reading this, it's really like some of the jokes they're making. I really felt like I could understand them really well, because maybe it's because European. comic I'm reading.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm reading new American comics, I tend to not understand some of the jokes because I like, it doesn't make any sense in my head. But some of the jokes in here, which they were saying, and I was like, oh yeah, right, I actually know what they're talking about. It's like, why, kind of thing. So I was like taken aback kind of thing while reading this. And I definitely think that this comic is what really, as I say, I wanted to say that art is just really drives forward for me to read more. I like the emotions, even though they're so happy, but they still have that emotional, like loving looks. It's very difficult to portray. All of them look the same. The aging process, or now you see them younger, the babies, but you actually recognize them straight away who they are. It's and that's very important in storytelling for me, especially in comic books. Because again, yes, the story is important, but for me, as I like looking at the art, most of the time, it's very refreshing, and I kind of feel like really jealous now knowing that this person draws so bloody well, because his panels are moving really well. When they jump the car, like they jump through and they're flying and they imagine that they're actually flying car, you can actually feel like you are there in the car sitting, and you're having that flight, and the boy, he's really not interested in anything, even though he's the smallest one in the second volume conversation. I think the most funniest thing was when they got that hitchhiker guy.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious too.
I was like, no, don't worry, I don't want, no, thank you. So he just left them because he couldn't deal with the family things, because they were trying to.
And it played against the whole idea of a hippie from the 60s should be all mellow and into things, but he was actually more uptight than the family was, and he couldn't deal with it. And they said, oh yeah, he's going to go back to his lawyer family soon enough.
Yeah, and I think one of the most immersive like art-wise is black and white and purple. The stories at nighttime when he's drawn. It's really works for me. It sets such a nice mood, especially in the second volume when he sets up the tent they're in the forest.
Right.
In the forest. They can't stay anywhere. They decide that they have to be they have to sleep anyway. So they decided, in the forest, they're going to pop up the tent, not knowing or aware of where they are. And they really, in the panels, you don't see anything surrounding you. So you kind of believe in, and suddenly next page you turn, and that's a really good thing. Like a moment, digitally was fine for me. Next page that you turn and it's daylight, and then you see this couple looking, and you're like, why are they looking? What are you looking at? And then you see the tent. That is such an amazing way of storytelling.
Here's the flying car, but it's easier to see there. That's a beautiful panel. The Comicsology there's that hippie we were mentioning, who ends up being so uptight.
Yeah, very much so.
Let me see if I can find that scene you were just describing. It's coming soonish.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one.
There you go. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It's like, wow, there's a forest. Yeah. and tomorrow we head south.
This artist really is amazing, and when you point out how how each person has a unique face and you can always recognize them at whatever age they are, that's a really good point, because that you just don't get that in comic books too often.
And if you blow up that page, that's what you see in the Nick.
Right, and then in the morning they turn out to be there in the people right back in the people's garden. But then, again, the American comic book reader in me expects something really bad's going to happen. Instead, these people are totally happy that they have someone visiting them. They spend the entire day entertaining them, feeding them meals, having fun chats, and then they invite them to spend another night sleeping in their garden.
Yeah,
well, and they invite them in to watch the moon landing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the time when they were discovering the moon landing. Yeah.
So there's just so much sort of flavor to this without it being negative, without it being, your cliched plot.
Yeah. It's definitely this comic book I would recommend to somebody who's not in the greatest mood, because it definitely will lift you up a little bit.
Right.
Well, of course, I was giggling. I usually, because I most of the time I have to take care of my child, so I usually read it before I go to sleep. So I wake my husband up while I'm reading next to him, and I just had giggles, and I was like, "Oh my god, sorry, I forgot where I am," kind of thing, because it just gives you that little, like, you need something. This comic books is necessary to have because you can't have doom and gloom all the time. So this is
Right.
something which can uplift you a little bit just by reading a couple of pages. And in funny saying, like you say, oh, Europe, like, oh, you meet something and maybe somebody is going to happen bad. But a couple of friends of mine who has been traveling, like lately, went down to France for camping, and they basically almost ended up in a similar situation. And they were fine as well. They found friends. They were like invited and saying, okay, don't worry, anything. And they were very apologetic. And I said, they could not believe that they were finding them, because they were basically stranded and they didn't know where to go. They had a couple of car troubles, and they had to stop. And then they found this basically field, but some areas not allowed to be camping. So they end up going in, like, really apologetically went to say to the family, if you allowed us to camp there, or at least park the car there. And they say, yeah, don't worry, you can put your tent up and blah, 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 and that, because thank you for asking, basically. And they were like, we don't speak French that much. So they really tried their best to, express themselves, but they were really, like, really happy to help. And then I was kind of, in a way, funny that even in real life, maybe that can happen, people
Right.
not always horrible, So, yeah, and then I love the beach where they end up having.
Oh yeah, that
just
is.
because they met that person,
Now,
So
do you always find a beach like that when you vacation in Europe? That would make me want to move to Europe.
I think there's plenty of areas like these. Honestly, you can find.
I'm going to show the picture of the beach now.
Yeah. Oh,
And
there you
this,
go. That's
they're just advised by this brand new friend of theirs whose garden they accidentally parked in to come to this beach.
Yeah.
Did they give them a key to the little cabin, or just told them how to get to it?
Yeah, there's a shack, they say, you can use it. And then you have this person attending via boat. And you would think, oh my God.
Right. I thought they'd be in trouble then, but no.
Yeah. And then once again, they didn't. Everything was perfectly fine. I mean, the shack was horrible. I mean, you wouldn't be able to basically stay in there. But at the end of the day, we had the shelter in case of the weather change.
Right. So they put the tent next to and created a shelter there. You can see in this picture.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, this is my favorite part, because we spend so much time just enjoying their vacation with them, and the imaginary things they do with their kids. And
yeah, I actually spoken to my mom and asked my mom's, like, because seeing how her holidays used to be, and she said most of the time, if her parents will take over, she had a sister and used to have holidays like very similar to like that. They used to be going and spending almost a month away.
Right.
Somewhere. Like when I, for example, growing up, I used to spend holidays. We used to have, like, we still had, but my sister lives now, a cottage. I used to spend like 3 months of summer in that cottage. Wow. Where I spend doing whatever hell I wanted to, and my family used to come in and come out. And unfortunately, they weren't able, both of them, to leave, be at the same time in holidays, especially for 3 months, which wasn't possible. But yeah, I kind of understand how the family had the holidays. These days, it wouldn't work with that. Like, where's my internet? Where's my phone reception? Where's my Twitter? Why is that not switching around? So I don't think that would be, you have to be stranded basically in order to enjoy this kind of holidays these days.
Hey, along with the other people I mentioned, Gray Man has said hi, and now Paulo Costa from Portugal has said hi. So he probably knows about European vacations. But Apollo, we're talking about this series of comics called Glorious Summer. Summers, sorry. And what were the names of the creators? Now I'm trying to get
Drew and Jordi. I can't pronounce his surname. So the writer's name is Drew, and the artist's name is Jordi
Lefebvre.
Yeah, something like
that. Oh no, the artist is Jordi Lefebvre, and the writer is Drew.
Yeah. Sorry.
And I'm guessing that perhaps Zidru has maybe some connection to Spain? Maybe his family went through this. I mean, I don't know, since he's chosen.
The artist is Spanish, by the way.
The artist is Spanish?
The artist himself, he lives in Barcelona.
Jordi Lefebvre? It sounds like a French name.
Yeah, you think so.
But his co-colorist, Mado Pena, definitely sounds from the Iberian Peninsula.
He is a Spanish illustrator. He lives in Barcelona, Spain. He's 42 years old, by the way, according to Wikipedia.
So the illustrator did not experience this directly, at least on this timeline.
And the Drew is Belgian.
Huh. Okay.
Let me see if I can see more of it about the writer.
Well, in the U.S., most people only have 2 weeks vacation. So there's no way you could do this kind of when you do have a vacation, you're in a rush to go visit your relatives for that short window that you've got. At least that's what I've always experienced. And only after being at the job that I used to be at for quite a while did I get 5 weeks vacation. And that was, a lot of people were jealous of me. That was kind of unusual. But my niece in England, her first job comes with 5 weeks vacation. So make a difference in life, the amount of vacation you have over the year.
Yeah, in England and here, there are lots of half-term holidays, like 20. And then you have summer holidays as well. So in combination, I think kids end up being like away from house and or school or anything for like 2 months at least. At least I'm talking about. I'm not sure for sure. I will find out soon with my own child, but yeah. Myself, I used to have, when I was growing up, I used to have, as I say, 3 months of holidays, summer holidays.
So Paulo, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
Paulo's asking if that was the first volume. We've been reading the English language translations on Comixology. We don't think there's print versions of it. And there are 5 translated versions of volumes available, at least in the Comixology in the US. You thought there was only 4 where you are, or
no? There's there's a 5th one, but I wasn't able to find where to download because it wasn't on the. It said coming up in mine where I looked it up.
So they've released it in the US, but not the UK yet. The 5th volume.
Probably. I mean,
they're very well translated. At no point do I feel like, oh, there's something wrong with the idiom here.
Exactly. Yeah, there was a couple of things, like there was some language, like sentences in Spanish or in French, but there was like a song or something in Spanish was very easy for me at least to understand.
Yeah, there was a song in French, and when they keep it in Spanish, I think, because the idea is we're a French reader, we're reading it as like a French reader would, and when someone inserts some Spanish, if you don't know Spanish, you're just not supposed to understand that. The grandfather does a kind of a broken mixture of French and Spanish, or in the translation, English and Spanish. So he uses the word yo instead of I, or however you properly pronounce it.
Exactly.
Well, it makes me wonder if there's a lot of other comics like, in this. Hello, Omnitron 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has arrived. What was I saying? With this kind of relaxed pace and then not feeling the need to focus just on problems in life 100%.
I'm not sure, honestly. As I say, I always struggled to find something especially European, which is translated in English. Unfortunately, I don't read French or read, and Spanish as well. So, but when they finally finding something like that, was really interesting in seeing how happy and sad in a way, but the storytelling, the way that the writer is taking the story is really interesting. At first, I was thinking, why would you go back? Because I already had a couple of questions from the first volume, like I told you about that imaginary friend and mother, then the loss of the baby. That was interesting to see why, and then basically why she decided that they want to divorce, and that just drove me to sit read more. As I say, I read 4 of them. And the 3rd one we have, without telling too much spoilers, we got introduced, even going back more. So now we only have 2 children. So the second girl, I forgot her name. She's like just basically baby, like maybe 6 months old, and then we get introduced to the mother's family, and they life, how she and what it's all about is, and they basically decided they had to go on holidays once again, but this time she's taking her parents with them by not choice really, because they get gifted at the car, the car they were talking about the basically a family member, that little Renault they drive in so many kilometers to go on holidays. In the third one, we basically get to understand how they got that car, and we are a little bit more understanding about her family and where they come from. And then also, what's interesting, it also shows at the first couple of pages the future, where the youngest child, Peaches, she's already like teenager. She's about 18 and 16. So in that sense, they give you more. They basically trying to get you saying, like, look, you're reading this back like in the past, but I'll still give you something to look forward to, So you're like, oh, okay. So they, like you, in this sense, I really like that, to understand where we're gonna go. And yeah, in the story, when they go again on the holidays, vacations, and what happens, and having your in-laws with you on holidays is not easy, especially as a young, kind of young family, still 2 kids, young kids, and then suddenly you have basically her mother-in-law being a bit hard as a companion, and you'll find out how and why. But then, as always, you have the kind of bad part of that, and how they struggle, the parents of her struggle to survive because of the era of Nazis and stuff like that. So that was very interesting. As I say, really good celebration of, as I say, really good writing for me. And then continuously, I was always wanted to know that all the characters' introductions, they have quite rich story to tell also, and enriches also the characters, the main characters we saw from the first volume, which I really appreciated in further reading. So, as I say, I'm looking forward to see the 5th one, because that one is kind of like already kids will be quite grown up, and seeing the future of the cartoonist, which I'm really interested in, if he's gonna make it. Is he finally gonna make it to become the famous guy he's so willing to be, and helping his family to basically continue blossoming? So.
Well, they're all smiling on the cover. Let me show you the cover.
They do smile on the cover. Yeah.
But I guess when they're smiling doesn't necessarily tell you if everything is happy.
Yeah.
But so this is, I will eventually buy it after I read the other ones. But, ooh, someone's making out on the couch.
Yeah. Very open. So
so on Comixology, this is from Europe Comics. So I assume they do digital only translation.
They have a lot of stories. I mean, there's so many of them. It's difficult to. I started browsing, and I got really lost, not knowing what to get, like what to actually look at.
Right.
So, but I was just continually wanted to read this Glorious Summers. As you can see, they had Black Sad.
Black Sad is the only one I recognize here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all I've read of European comics, besides, as a kid, I was lucky enough to come across Asterix and Tintin, but all I've read as an adult is kind of in the Mobius science fiction vein. So I haven't really experienced these other genres. Although I have finally found some Lieutenant Blueberry. Right after you guys did your video on it, I found one one British volume, the Titan book, that had 2.
They are basically the same, but it's just a Titan banner on it. It's nothing different to the English one anyway. So.
And Terrence just said Lucky Luke as well for me. They referenced Lucky Luke a lot in the first 2 volumes.
Because the kids are reading. The son, he's completely immersed in Lucky Luke stories.
It almost made me wonder: are there more parallels to Lucky Luke hidden in this that I don't know?
Well, maybe, I'm not sure. But I mean, I remember. I mean, actually, it's funny enough. After reading those 4s, I went into, because I'm not through Comixology. I have this app, Eyes Neo. I don't know, whatever it is,
Mm.
a new app I found, and they have Billy the Kid, first volume of Lucky Luke for free.
Oh,
So I was
really?
starting reading that. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I have to try this. So I'm into reading that.
How do you
Of
spell
course,
the name of that app?
okay, I will give you IZNEO.
IZNEO. Okay.
Yeah.
Izeno, something like that.
It's,
Huh. I'll
yeah,
look for
and
that. See if I can get it
yeah,
here.
yeah, and this app as well has lots of like mangas, all sort of, even IDW selection. Could you believe?
Hmm.
And lots of even like Jodorowsky's Archie's stories. I think it's very similar to Comixology, and a lot of people say reviewing that this app is actually much better than previous apps like Comixology is.
Right.
So I decided to get that one. I was like, oh, first volume for free, and they have like European comics, manga, US comics, graphic novels, kids, webtoons. So that's quite
Yeah.
a choice in this app. So.
I wonder whether a lot of the Mobius stuff is tied up in some kind of legal issue that we don't see it in the United States, because everything is in print now. Why isn't Mobius in print? It's just bizarre. But there might be something with the heirs and different people arguing over rights. I don't know. Paulo says we should try The Mercenary by Vincent Sangreles, if you can find it. It's a science fantasy series like the Middle Ages with dragons and Enlightenment era weapons.
Interesting.
Vincente. Anyway, I do wonder if I saw this in print, if I would be as wowed by the coloring, because that is what grabbed me in the first place. So I'm starting to wonder whether digital
I would think
comics...
like...
Sorry?
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
on. You go on. Sorry. I'm interrupting you.
I've just been starting to wonder whether the coloring is what will finally really convert me to digital comics. I mean, I dabble in digital comics quite a bit, but you know, if the colors are going to just all look so much better, I might eventually be drawn deeper into focusing on digital comics. Well,
I must say to you, I felt, I mean, I'm not really much into digital comics, but I kind of have to push myself into it because of convenience, the way to read it, of the time. Because having a paper comic book next to my child is like World War II could explode, because he's going to try to rip it off, broken. He's already took one of my Dark Horses Presents and ripped it apart so quickly. I was like, wow, how did you do that? But anyway, so in that saying, I decided, like, I read some, but after reading this, and then I was reading a couple of the single issues, and I was like thinking, oh my God, you know, the light really pops the color and makes the panel work so interestingly. But keeping the memory after reading digital comic books is quite difficult for me. Even like now, Glorious Summers, I read one after another one in succession almost. And that helped me to continue understanding the story really well. But then I stopped, and then now we're talking about the first volume. Before we actually started the chat, I kind of just scrolled through. I didn't read. I just scrolled through the panels to just remind myself what was happening there. And that kind of, for me, maybe I guess I need to get used to it. But in saying convenience-wise, digital comics does really give you that.
Yeah. Well,
and
I too, just like you, I think.
Sorry, we were talking over each other.
Literally talk at identically the same moment. I just wanted to add, just like you, I find that comics don't stick in my head as well when I read them digitally. And I don't know if that's something that I'll get better at too. I think maybe I already am getting a bit better at it. But
I was listening to podcasts. I think you know them. Wait, what podcast?
Yes.
And then they were talking about, they have one of the guys was saying that he has omnibuses and he has digital versions. And then he's reading them, kind of like read digital ones, and then went back to omnibus. But he was complaining that the art wasn't popping up as much as it was in digital. And saying, so why the hell do I have an omnibus as well? So he was saying, like, maybe I should go just revert completely to digital, because he's like so disappointed when he was just flipping the page. but it's up to everybody else's choice and need kind of thing.
Yeah, at the moment I'm pulled in various different directions, but overall I still I just ordered these comics from this new company that gives you the first issue digitally for free. And even though I could sample them all, in the end, I just glanced at them and didn't actually read the digital versions and went ahead and ordered 2 of them anyway. They're kind of interesting. If you want them in the individual issues, they send you a box with 6 issues. And they're a little oversized, a little bigger.
I want to just ask you if you have to sample
them.
them.
A regular comic to compare it to. I guess they're just slightly oversized, which actually can be a drag. It may hard to find a bag to put them in and that sort of thing. I haven't actually read them yet. I just got them in the mail. I couldn't get my comic book store to order them.
Yeah.
So
Samuel Chekhov was saying that it's bad for your eyes to read digital comics, which is kind of understandable, because at the end of the day, you continuously looking at the screen, like a computer screen. So yeah, it could be something.
Is it really bad to read from a computer screen, or is it bad to read from a computer screen with a low resolution? So if you are rich and buy a high resolution screen, because as I've gotten, you don't have to be that rich, but I mean, as I've gotten older, I've spent more money on high resolution screens because my eyes hurt. But sometimes I'll be reading a print comic. This is not a good example because all the print is actually quite big in this one. Sometimes the print's too small, and I wish it was digital and I could pinch and zoom and make the print bigger. So the older you get,
where's your magnifying glass? Old school, like Sherlock Holmes. Come on.
Well, that's what my recently departed dad used to do. He had a giant flat magnifying glass he would put on top of a magazine to read it. But so much easier to change the font size if you're reading digitally or in a comic book, pinch and zoom. But these are, I wonder if this comic book company will succeed. It's called TKO Studios. It's got very professional looking material.
He's asking, Samuel Trejo asking, so plugging it into the flat screen helps?
Yeah, I mean, I have a iPad Pro, so it has a very, very high resolution screen, and I find it very easy to read. But it may still be bad for my eyes. I don't know. I think,
don't know in the long term.
There's a lot of things you could do that are bad for your eyes, like reading in low light, reading a non-screen kind of thing without enough light on it.
Yeah, also
reading too closely. Supposedly why
be reading through the mobile phones as well, which is kind of weird. I wouldn't be able to. I mean, I tried once.
Yeah.
Like, like you get, like Comixology lets you blow each panel, so which is fine. But you can still continue reading it in such a small screen. That would be quite a hectic thing for your eyes. So yeah, I miss myself. Yeah. I read in iPad Pro as well, like you do. So I don't have really much problem of resolution wise. However, I would presume, and I mean, at the end of the day, we're still looking at computer, like a kind of computer screen, which I can't understand it, but
yeah,
nothing's good. I mean, reading books like for a prolonged period of time.
Oh, I think we lost you for a second there, Rasa.
Yeah, you still there?
Okay. Either I went out or you went out. I don't really know who.
No, I saw you freezing, but I don't know if maybe I was freezing.
But I think we're both. I think whoever went away is back. Both of us are back.
Yeah.
So we just lost you for a second when you were talking about screens. But I mean, I heard most of what you said about screens. So I'm trying to figure out what.
No, I'm saying the books wise. Like if you read books, you for a long time as well, it's not good. So you have to give your eyes rest because of the concentrations of letters. So, I mean, just in general, all of the things can be bad habits if you're doing it for a long period of time, no matter what you do.
Well, Terrence is heading out to go bowling. I'm trying to picture him bowling with some kind of avant-garde noise music playing at the same time. But
or maybe his computer noises he brings with him. Yes, Tuesdays. Tuesdays is a bowling day, I think.
And sometimes I find the dark coloring in some comics to actually
Mhm.
kind of be a strain on my eyes as I'm trying to read them, just in print.
Mhm. Mhm.
This one is actually pretty good, but it's the darkest one I happen to have in front of me.
Mhm. So how
Sometimes
many stories
when
did
the
you pick up?
contrasts are not strong enough.
How many stories did you pick up from those TKOs?
Two of them. So one is
Mhm.
called The Fearsome Dr. Fang, and it's written
Mhm.
by one of the founders of TKO, whose name I can't pronounce, Tzi Chun. I heard him
Mhm.
interviewed on one of the podcasts, I think Off Panel, that I listen to
Mhm.
pretty often. And he's a
Mhm.
TV writer, and he and some internet millionaire founded this company. I think we're going to see a lot
Mhm.
of, or already are seeing a lot of companies founded on the fact that someone who's really rich just wants to own a comic book company. Hey,
Mhm.
Carlos. But so this one, the Fearsome Dr. Fang looks really nice, but I haven't read it
Mhm.
yet. And then the other
Mhm.
one, where to go? Is called Goodnight Paradise, and it's written by Joshua Dysart, whose writing I've liked. Like he's
Oh
done a lot
yeah.
of writing at Valiant, and I think I can't remember. There's some cool DC comics he's done in the past.
Yeah,
This
he
one,
sounds familiar.
and this one is about the Goodbye Paradise. Apparently, is a murder mystery that takes place amongst homeless people in LA, I think.
Wow, really?
So, and the
Int-
art is by Alberto Ponticelli, who I remember liking a lot in the past. But I
Mhm.
actually am not immediately attracted to the art of these ones as
I
much.
see.
So we'll
Mhm.
see as I read it how it goes.
Are you gonna make a video about them?
I'm sure I will eventually, yeah.
Cool.
Although I hate to promise things because I just go on my whims when I have the time, and sometimes there's something I really want to talk about. By the time I have time to talk about it, I've moved on to something else. So, but hopefully I'll
Well,
make a video about these.
well, I hope you're gonna mention a couple words. The thing is, what interested me about this one, they don't deal with diamond, which is
Right.
interesting enemy to pick up. Eh?
It is. And so on this podcast, they said, well, that comic shops could order directly from them and get the 50% discount and free shipping. But
Mm-hmm.
my comic book store still didn't want to deal with it. And I was bummed out because then I would have gotten a 25% discount. Instead, I had to order them online. And
Mm-hmm.
when I tried to order them at their website, it was
Mm-hmm.
full price plus a shipping charge, like $3 or maybe even $6. So then I
Wow.
went and looked on Amazon and I got
Mm-hmm.
it for the full price, but with no shipping charge, even though it
Mm-hmm.
shipped to me directly from TKO Studios anyway.
Interesting.
So it's a little more expensive to get them, I guess.
Mm. I guess it's I always so I try to get conversation with my comic book guy who sends me by post my comic books, and he's like, so where how it's always like always there's once he always has to mention diamond because they do something wrong to him, and it's like, oh
Right.
my god, did I do something to them that they don't like me anymore or something like that?
Yeah, my
Because
comic book shop guys, sometimes as I walk in, he's on the phone complaining to someone at Diamond. So I was
oh
surprised
my
he wasn't eager to try to bypass them. But
mm.
I think it just seemed like, since I was the only one interested, it just seemed like too much of a hassle to him to learn something new.
Yeah, I haven't asked my
He
guy
got
yet
frustrated.
because he usually does get things whenever I'm asking to, but this is kind of like quite too much steps to ask him, and he's the only one working in there. It's like, oh my god, I
Right.
feel like guilty to even bother him even more with other things, even though he would be like maybe some making money from me at the end of the day, but
Right.
you never know. But yeah, interesting to see about this new company. I mean, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, somebody else comes in, it always gets people talking, and maybe if they're gonna go through, we'll see. You did one interesting in Steve Epting, whatever, and Ennis or
Yeah.
Warren.
Garth Ennis and Steve Epting are doing one. I didn't
Sarah.
order it just because I wasn't in the mood for a war comic, but maybe
Mm.
the art looked really nice. It was um, colored by Brightweiser.
Elizabeth
Elizabeth
Brightweiser, yeah.
Brightweiser, one of the best colorists.
Hmm.
So
Have you read Velvet from Steve Epting and Baker?
Yes, I have. Well, I read the first trade a long time ago, and I think
Mhm.
there were more trades. I need to go back and find the rest. I kind of let it slip by me, but I really liked it.
I really enjoyed it. I felt
Yeah, it was
like
very good.
the art in generally was another thing which really drove me to it. Of course, Brubaker is, it's easy to pick him up. It's quite good. I mean, it's a very good writer in comic books, and that story one, especially espionage and lady who is basically almost like 007,
Right,
but
right.
female,
But middle
you
age.
know.
I like the middle-aged aspect of it too.
Yes, exactly. That she wasn't the young chick with the giant boobs, and she's
Right.
gonna attack you with those and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, but this was like, as I say, it was really good. Nice that you have read as well this with me this and talk to you about this comic book. And getting a sample of European comics was definitely something. I think that it was a win for us to try this first one,
Yeah.
because it definitely was really, for me, as I'm saying, really rewarding. And definitely, whoever you like try to have a little bit of a family story, but with really beautiful art, you definitely in sample a little bit of the comics in digital. Definitely highly recommend this. Glorious
Yeah.
Summers.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I'd highly recommend
Mm,
Glorious Summers, and
mm.
completely different from any other comic that I've read.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
very, it's not like some small indie comic or something. It's very professional, very high
Mhm,
end comic book art and everything like
exactly. Mm,
that.
exactly. So
Have
what's
you
your
read?
next reading? Oh, sorry. Go
Sorry,
on.
what was the next what?
What's your next reading? What reading next in your comic life?
Well, I have a huge pile of my regular floppies that I haven't been getting
Mm,
to. I actually, the last thing I finished is I caught up on a bunch of Ahoy comics. Have you heard of
okay.
that comic book? That's also a
I've,
brand new comic book company, Ahoy. Like
I've
Ahoy there,
heard
matey.
I heard you talking in your videos definitely, but I haven't had the chance to sample. The floppies, as I say, I've been culling them quite a bit in my
Right.
playlist because unable to read them while the presence of my child. So,
Yeah. So I wonder
but
if Ahoy will last, but while they last, I mean, I wonder how
mhm,
they're being funded and everything, because they're very high end paper, and the comics are thicker for $3.99 than the other ones. And
mhm,
they have, at first I was very cynical because they have some one-page short stories in prose at the back, but most of what
huh,
I've read has been actually extremely good, short fiction. And
okay,
so usually they give you a 20-page story and then like a 4-page backup comic story, and then three
I
or four
see.
pages of text. And for the same
Interesting.
price, you normally get 20 pages, and it's on
Wow,
better
that's
paper
quite
and
a.
there's no ads.
Mhm. So,
They do.
how's the story so far?
Well, so I've read 3 of them.
Mhm.
Captain Ginger,
Oh
uh,
yeah, there's one.
Other Earth, Wrong Earth, one called Wrong Earth, which is a play on
Mhm.
Batman. Captain Ginger is like Star Trek meets anthropomorphic cats from Commandy or something.
That sounds like something I would be interesting to
It's a
read.
lot of
Actually, I
fun.
like Star Trek and I like Commandy, so why wouldn't I?
And then, yeah, so I think a lot of people would like Captain Ginger. And
Mhm,
it just wrapped up its first arc, and they're going to do a trade.
mhm.
And I think they're not going to come back with it for
Oh,
like 6 months or something. So they're taking a long break, which is maybe a mistake. Uh,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
and then another one was called not Wrong Heaven, something about heaven, higher heaven.
Okay.
And it's about this jerk who goes to heaven and discovers there's now 2 levels to heaven.
What? Okay.
It had something to do with the politics of the angels or something, where they decided they needed to let more people into heaven, but they didn't want to let all these losers who really weren't worthy of heaven into the good part of heaven.
So what's going on in heaven that they need to allow somebody else to come in? That's
It's
funny.
kind of like a marketing thing where you can't admit that almost everyone's going to hell.
Sounds really good. Actually hilarious.
So it's very
Wow.
funny. And it also just has a 4-issue arc, and now they're taking a break. And it was really good
Mhm.
until maybe the end of the 4th issue, where it kind of felt like, oh, they're copping out because they just want to leave plenty of space open for the next storyline. Um,
Uh-huh.
So it kind of ends unresolved when it was promising a kind of a resolution by that issue.
Okay.
And that,
I'm reading
but
Dick's.
overall, so I just think Ahoy comics, for at least the hardcore comic book fan, are really worth checking out.
Mhm.
And I do
That's
hope they
great.
succeed, but I kind of wonder if they will.
So after, I think you remember, I tweeted you by surprise because I was listening to your guys' podcast, Never Stay Dead.
Right.
And then you were saying that you have never read Preacher, and I was like, what? And that was really surprising because I've kind of thought that you have, in a way, I thought that you read it, or maybe I've even thought that I saw you saying that you have read it. And then you're saying that you have never read it. It's like, what? I'm not saying that you have to read it, but it's just for surprise.
People
Good
kind of
surprise.
assume that I've read all the,
Previous stuff.
important stuff, but I haven't.
Yeah.
I have a spotty record of, at times being more in depth into comics than others. I think at the time Preacher was coming out, I just wasn't aware of it. I was just randomly popping into comic book stores and finding things, but not finding Preacher. And I don't know if I would have picked it up if I saw a comic named Preacher, because I didn't know who the creators were, and I would have made assumptions about what it was about.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's very. I read it last year. I decided that okay, I'm gonna just go for it. I mean, there's quite like 12 volumes as well, like our many stories, which is good stories. Like I've extensive read, but I decided that I have to, because of TV show, of course. Because my husband was very keen to watch it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to read some before. And that was the worst mistake I've done.
Oh, really?
Because after reading it and watching that show, it's like, no, don't do this. No, why? What are you doing? And I was doing that most of the time I was watching. And I think my husband got really tired of me in a way because he was enjoying it because he didn't read the comic. And I was the one like, oh, why? And
you were the annoying person who was like, it's so much better in the book.
Yes, exactly. I felt like finally I had that, you guys always telling about, you are that comic book, like the guy who knows everything and then telling you that, no, this is not supposed to be, you should completely follow the comic book because the comic book is so great. And I was that person. It's like, wow, I know how this feels now, kind of in a way. Because my husband was like, but why don't you want to watch this? I was like, but didn't you read? I was like, yeah, you haven't read it, but you should read this. Because when you read, well, in generally the Preacher, when I read it, I was like surprised at first because the foulness of language, but I wasn't in a way surprised because of who is writing it. Because it was well known for that prior by everybody else, or you read the reviews. But I really liked the Steve Dillon art. The panels were going. And the story itself was really cool. And the more I read, the more I wanted to read more. And the more I read that, I wanted to read more. And the way it ended, I really enjoyed it as well. And yeah, so. And now my goal is to read Boys.
Yeah, I have not read Boys either. And I feel like I ought to have read that. In fact, someone was just chatting with me in comments about how he expected that I had read The Boys, and I hadn't.
Yeah, so it's my goal now is to read The Boys, because I was thinking, okay, I read something like Preacher and I really enjoyed it, so surely I would enjoy something like Boys. I read the first issue already, and I liked it. I was surprised how they started the story, that it was based on superheroes who were too many of them in the world. And there you go, those boys who I guess will be somehow sorting them out. I don't know how, but this is the first issue. And the way the situation of that, what is this actor's name? English, it's a Scottish guy, who looks in that comic book, like he's like, looks like that, the character. I forgot his name, sorry. Anyway, so he is, he's the way the situation was put in, that was shocking to me, but that's what I'm supposed to, I guess, expect from The Boys, because it's going to be quite graphic and quite brutal. Because in the first comic book you have a 60, like the main guy, I think he's like he's going to be the main character. he got into a CIA, a female, she in charge of CIA. He went in there, and then suddenly they have sex, and you're like, what the hell happened? I'm like, huh? So kind of that kind of expectations of that.
And
so yeah,
was that originally published by Vertigo, and they decided it was too rough for them to publish, and then someone else picked it up?
well, it says Dynamite on
Dynamite,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it might have started. It might have started at Vertigo for a few issues, and then moved to Dynamite because.
Yeah, because the thing is, I have the first volume, and it says Dynamite on it.
Right.
So I guess that's how it goes.
Well,
I'm looking forward. Yeah.
Samuel Trejo asks if we have looked at this book called 101 Comics You Must Read Before You Die. 1001 Comics You Must Read Before You Die.
Nope.
I think I got something like that out of the library years ago. I don't know if there's a more updated one. I remember looking through it and feeling like not all of the comics in there do you have to read. But it all depends on your point of view.
No, I mean, there's lots of like stories prior came out, like Vertigo line. I was completely like, I haven't read Sandman. I read Sandman I managed to read 2 volumes, but then I don't know why. I didn't stop for a reason. I know why I stopped, because I had to give birth to baby boy. So that's why I stopped. Was reading before I was giving birth, and I kind of shoved that aside. But I don't have any more volumes, and I'm debating if I should sell some comic books in order to buy those nice hardcovers, because they look stunning, but they pricey as hell. I mean, one of them is like £100. I think I saw.
I think they're like leather bound or something.
Exactly.
But
so I would love to that, because it's much bigger size, isn't it? It's oversized as well.
Yeah.
Because the art is what I've read from the trades were so much to look at, but I wasn't really into it as much, because I kind of had to look through it really slowly, and I was like, I wanted to kind of like be clear what I'm looking at in the panel wise.
Right.
So yes. So my thinking, I'm still continuing reading, like really, as I say, enjoying a couple of things. That Immortal Hulk is definitely something I want to continue with. The Middle West is surprising me, because it's Scott Young's writing, but the art is good from I forgot the name of the artist now. I'm continue picking it up. So yeah, and I'm deciding to read something what I've heard or whatever I have. For example, I just for Christmas I got for birthday I got Harrow County hardcover, the first.
I hear lots of great things about that, and I haven't read that yet.
And it looks like really good. I read already a couple of pages, and I'm really I should just sit down and just read it. And I want to read. I also have like 5 volumes of The Goon I want to read, because the new one coming out. Do you know that?
I knew there's a new series coming out, but I've never read any Goon either. It's just too much to read.
But looking at your sorry,
looking at my what?
Looking at your videos, I lost your audio. Oh wait, sorry.
You lost my audio?
Yeah, for a second, just probably me. Yeah, looking at your like the holes you have, and those omnibuses you come. I was like, what you read? You should be lost in your own library. I mean, the choice you have is amazing.
Yeah,
it's like,
there's
wow,
just too much to read.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you
I
find
want to just say hi to David Lee and Rob Wise Guy 82 who've joined us. We're probably close to wrapping up, but great that you guys are both here. And
I think
we currently have 6 viewers, so that's pretty good. It's deep into Wednesday for LaRasa. I'm still in Tuesday.
Yeah, you still live in Tuesday, which is I'm annoyed. I usually have to say I have time for me. This is my time for me when the baby boy and with the father is asleep. So I have time to read or draw, which I'm doing lately, and I'm just trying to basically make myself do things what makes me happy.
That's very good, and it's hard sometimes to do that when you're deep in the throes of parenthood. So that's good that you're keeping an eye on that. I see a drawing by you every day on Twitter, which I enjoy a lot.
Oh, thank you. I decided it from last October, the Inktober, like that's where
Right,
people
I remember
always draw
Inktober,
me.
yeah.
So this is my first day of the drawing. I haven't stopped since. So every single day I decided I'm gonna draw something. I just get the habit into me. It's very difficult. It's being new parent and finding out the life of being that person is, it's very something. It takes you back, and you lose completely who you are really
Right.
really quickly, very quickly. And I
You're living
decided,
for someone else at the moment.
yeah, exactly. And I said I don't want to make me stop enjoying what I enjoyed prior to that. So slowly I found out that if I get into habit of doing it, I'm going to continue doing it. And that's why now, like me showing up on YouTube, because it makes me happy being able to talk to you guys on YouTube. And that's why I wanted to, once a week, once a month, whatever does happen, it happens,
Right.
and it makes me happy. So
It's great
that's
that
one thing.
you're being smart to carve out those
It's
things that keep your identity going, while you have
yeah, exactly.
put so much of your time into rearing the child.
Exactly, yeah. So
Well, Samuel Trejo asked, did the Goon ever get a show? And I have no idea because I don't pay attention
no,
to Hollywood. But
no, never went through, but it's still kind of in a cloud of maybe, because the Goon was always there.
one reason I don't read the Goon is because I realize there's so many volumes of it out already. I feel intimidated. Did we lose each other again?
Yeah,
I think.
you completely stopped. I don't know what's happening. Froze, and I was like, "Oh my god, what happened?" Yeah, the Goon is not. It's in the cloud of whatever maybe happens. Still not sure. I don't think it came out or will come out. So, but I'm looking forward to seeing the new ones, because I read I'm deep into the volume, the first hardcover, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm kind of dabbled in quite a lot of things. The Blueberry is one thing. I was almost about to finish whatever I have. No, already finished whatever I had, which was lovely. So I'm trying to basically don't stop me reading whatever I have. Like this, basically, if I have something, I want to read it because it's there in front of me. It's very easy to get distracted, but it's plenty of reading material. And so far what I've read, like this digital comic try was such a success. I'm going to continue looking in that European comics website and seeing maybe I can find something. Yeah, because I liked it. I really enjoyed it. It had a European flavor I wasn't aware of. Let's say this way. It made me feel more European after reading it. I feel like, because I
Does
was
it make you want to have 3 more children and get a small car and just pack them all in and drive off into the sun?
Not really. No, it's not ideal to have struggles like that, but in different era. At the end of the day, in this day, it will be as difficult. I think having children is as difficult as it any ever been, because of our struggles and things in life situations. But definitely having one child would be something to think of. A second one probably in the future, but it's not easy. And definitely not. If somebody told you that it's easy, they bloody lied, and you should tell them you bloody liars, because it's not. Especially for new moms, what I can say for myself, I never thought that it would be so difficult in some moments.
Yeah.
So
No matter how much you tell someone that's going to be difficult, they can't believe it till they have to go through it.
no, it's true. It's always like that. It's true. You have to experience it when you get to the point where it's actually basically this baby's lying in front of you, and you have to be somebody who protects them, feeds them, make sure they don't cry because they're unhappy about something, and you start worrying about little things. Oh my god, it makes a sound. Why did it make that sound? And you're like, oh, you get lost. And then yourself. That's another thing. It's really difficult to lose yourself completely, because it's the first thing you want to. You wake up, the first thing you think of, open your eyes, baby, baby, baby. You eat, you don't even go to the toilet because the baby. Sometimes, so it's funny.
Yeah, before you have kids, you think people have gone overboard with all this, but once you have kids, it's like you feel the responsibility of this other life, and it really
And it's interesting that, like, art-wise, like, oh, I had so much time to draw, and now, yes, why did I waste that shit of time of just sitting down and doing nothing? Just I could have done so many things, but it's how, as I say, I try now. How can I do the same things, but with my child? So learning new things, and that will drive me maybe do some other areas I've never experienced. But why not? You know, if it makes me happy, why I'll do whatever I can do to make me that. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to end the hangout. I think we've talked for quite a while. We both totally agree that you should all go out and read Glorious Summers if you're able to, either in the original French or digitally in English. Maybe if it gets popular enough digitally, they'll decide to print it. Because I think I would, even though I love the digital colors, I think I would want to own a hard copy. And Paulo's going to send us an image on Twitter later about the book he recommended. So that'll be, Paulo's a good resource for finding out about European comics.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.